Welcome back to CMA USA Exam Coach, your trusted study companion. From this episode onwards, we are beginning an important topic, risk management process. This is the main topic under Section D of your syllabus, and it is one of the key areas you must understand well. Now, this part of the syllabus is mostly theory, but don't worry. We will explain it step by step in the simplest possible way with real-life examples so that you can easily remember and apply the concepts. And as always, if you have any doubts or need clarification, please share them in the comments section. We will take note of your queries and help you out in our doubt-solving sessions later. So let's get started with risk management process.
Now let's understand the main steps in the risk management process. We will just go through them in simple words first, and later, we will explain each one in detail with examples. The basic steps are: Step 1. Risk identification. This is the foundation of risk management. In this step, we identify all possible risks that could affect the organization. Risks can come from many areas, such as financial risks, operational risks, compliance risks, technology failures, or even natural disasters. The aim here is to create a complete list of potential threats before they cause any damage. Step 2. Risk assessment. Once risks are identified, the next step is to analyze them. Risk assessment means evaluating two key things: the likelihood of the risk happening, the impact it would have if it occurs. This helps us to separate small, manageable risks from those that could seriously affect the business. For example, a delay in a small project may have low impact, while a cyber attack can have a very high impact. Step 3. Risk prioritization. After assessment, we cannot treat all risks equally. Some are critical, while others may not need immediate attention. So, in this step, we arrange risks in order of importance. Usually, organizations use tools like a risk matrix to rank risks from high to low priority. This ensures that management focuses its time, money, and energy on the most dangerous risks first. Step 4. Risk response planning. Now comes the action stage. For each risk, we prepare a strategy. There are 4 common approaches. Avoid the risk. For example, stop an activity that is too risky. Transfer the risk, like taking insurance or outsourcing. Mitigate the risk. Reduce the chances or impact through better controls. Accept the risk. If it is minor or unavoidable, we simply accept it but remain prepared. The key point is to choose the most practical and cost-effective response for each risk. Step 5. Risk monitoring. Risks are not static. They change with time, technology, and market conditions. That's why continuous monitoring is necessary. Monitoring helps us track whether the risk response strategies are working as expected, and also identify any new risks that may emerge. Without monitoring, even the best plans can fail in the long run. So these are the 5 essential steps in the risk management process. In the upcoming slides, we will go into each step in detail with practical examples so that the concept becomes crystal clear. In this episode, we are covering the first step in the risk management process, and that is risk identification. Risk identification means identifying all possible events that might adversely impact the company or prevent it from achieving its objectives. In simple words, we are trying to list down everything that could go wrong, so that we are prepared in advance. To do this effectively, the company should analyze 4 main areas. A. Internal business. Risks can come from within the organization itself. For example, shortage of skilled employees, machine breakdowns, poor financial management, or lack of leadership. These are risks that arise from inside the company and can directly affect performance. B. External environment. Businesses do not operate in isolation. The external environment includes market changes, government regulations, competitors, economic slowdown, political instability, or even natural disasters. For instance, a sudden increase in raw material prices or new government tax rules can pose a serious risk. C. Business processes. Every organization depends on its internal processes to deliver goods and services. If these processes are inefficient or outdated, they create risks. For example, delays in supply chain, errors in financial reporting, weak IT systems, or poor quality control. Identifying risks in processes helps the company improve efficiency and reduce chances of failure. D. Existing controls. Even when controls are already in place, they may not always work perfectly. For example, if a company has a control for approving expenses, but managers are not following it strictly, then that control itself becomes a weak spot. Reviewing existing controls helps us see whether they are strong enough to prevent risks or if improvements are required. So, to summarize, risk identification is about creating a full list of possible threats by looking at the internal business, the external environment, business processes, and existing controls. Once this list is prepared, then we can move on to assessing and prioritizing them. The risk identification process should take place at all levels of the organization. This is very important because risks can arise from anywhere, and no single person or department has a complete picture of the business. That's why every business unit should be involved in identifying risks. Within each unit, key employees should be tapped to participate in the identification process, since they are the ones who understand their own area best. Let's see some of the key units where risk identification is required. A. Operations. This covers day-to-day activities like production, supply chain, and customer service. Employees in this area can highlight risks such as machine breakdowns, supplier delays, or safety issues in the workplace. B. Finance and accounting. The finance team can identify risks related to cash flow shortages, credit risk, fraud, errors in reporting, or non-compliance with accounting standards. Since financial health is critical, their inputs are essential. C. Information technology. IT. Technology is a backbone of modern organizations. The IT team can identify risks like cyber attacks, data theft, system failures, or software bugs that might stop business operations. D. Unit management. Managers at different levels can point out risks related to staffing, employee turnover, lack of training, or failure to meet performance targets. They act as a bridge between staff and senior management in spotting risks. E. Human resources. The HR department can highlight risks related to employee satisfaction, labor disputes, compliance with labor laws, and talent retention. Without strong HR, other functions may also suffer. F. Marketing and sales. This team faces risks such as changing customer preferences, competition, pricing pressures, or loss of market share. Identifying these risks helps the business respond quickly to changes in the market. G. Legal and compliance. This unit identifies risks related to contracts, regulatory requirements, and lawsuits. A failure here could result in heavy fines or reputational damage. So, the idea is simple. Risk identification is not the job of only top management. It is a collective effort. Each business unit brings in its unique perspective, and when combined, the organization gets a complete risk profile. This ensures no major risk is left unnoticed. When we talk about internal events, we mean risks that arise from within the organization itself. These risks are under the company's direct influence and control, but if not managed properly, they can significantly affect operations. Let's go through some key examples. 1. Capital investments. Companies often make big investments to support growing customer demand, improve service, or reduce downtime in operations. But these investments come with risks. For example, a company may buy new machines worth millions, but if demand slows down, those machines may sit idle and create financial losses. 2. Technological change. When technology changes, businesses must adapt their processes. For instance, introducing automation in a factory might require retraining staff. If the change is not handled properly, it could lead to employee resistance, operational errors, or costly downtime. 3. Personnel events. Employees are a critical resource, but they also bring risks. Work stoppages due to strikes, internal fraud, or losing a key employee can disrupt the entire business. For example, if the head of IT suddenly resigns, the company may face delays in system upgrades or ongoing projects. 4. Process inefficiencies. Sometimes risks come from poorly designed business processes. For example, if the approval process for supplier payments is too complex, it could delay payments, damage supplier relationships, or even result in missed discounts. 5. Internal control failures. A lack of proper checks and balances can lead to fraud or errors. For example, if the same person is allowed to both approve and record transactions, it increases the risk of fraudulent entries. 6. Resource management issues. This includes improper allocation of raw materials, financial resources, or even staff. For instance, if too many employees are allocated to one project while others are left short-staffed, deadlines may be missed. 7. Communication gaps. Sometimes risks arise simply because teams are not sharing information effectively. For example, if the sales team fails to communicate a sudden increase in orders to the production team, the company might fail to deliver on time, hurting customer satisfaction. 8. Safety and compliance failures. Internal events also include failure to comply with safety standards. For example, ignoring workplace safety can lead to accidents, employee injury, and even lawsuits. So, internal events cover everything that happens within the organization: investments, technology, people, processes, and controls. Identifying these risks early helps management take preventive steps before they become serious problems. When we talk about external events, we are referring to risks that arise outside the organization, often beyond the company's direct control. These risks can have a major impact on performance, and the company must constantly monitor the external environment to stay prepared. Let's look at the main categories. 1. Economic events. These include both domestic and international economic conditions. For example, a recession may reduce consumer spending and lower demand for the company's products. Similarly, international trade disputes may lead to currency fluctuations or tariffs. For instance, if the Indian rupee depreciates sharply against the US dollar, import costs for raw materials may rise, increasing overall expenses. 2. Natural disasters. Companies face risks from natural events such as fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, or even volcanic eruptions. These events can disrupt supply chains, damage facilities, and halt production. For example, the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan forced many global automakers to stop production because key suppliers were affected. 3. Political events. Government policies and political changes can create uncertainty. Examples include new tax laws, changes in labor regulations, or results of elections that shift economic priorities. For instance, if a government suddenly increases import duties on certain goods, companies relying on imported raw materials may see their costs rise significantly. 4. Social factors. Changes in demographics, lifestyle, and consumer preferences also create risks. For example, as populations age in many countries, demand for healthcare services and retirement products increases, while demand for youth-focused products may decline. Similarly, increased awareness of sustainability is pushing companies to adapt to consumer demand for eco-friendly products. 5. Technological change. While technology is often an opportunity, it can also pose risks. For example, new technology might make a company's product obsolete. Think of how smartphones reduced the demand for cameras, MP3 players, and GPS devices. On the other hand, companies can use the same technological shifts to create new services and products, but if they fail to adapt, they risk losing market share. 6. Competitive pressures. External events also include sudden moves by competitors. For example, if a competitor launches a cheaper or more innovative product, it can quickly erode a company's market share. 7. Global supply chain disruptions. Events in other countries can have a ripple effect. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic caused global supply chain disruptions, leading to shortages of semiconductors, raw materials, and shipping delays worldwide. 8. Environmental and climate risks. Beyond natural disasters, ongoing climate change is creating risks. Rising sea levels, stricter environmental laws, and public pressure for sustainability can all affect how a company operates. For example, companies producing high-emission products may face reputational and regulatory challenges. So, external events include economic, political, natural, social, technological, competitive, and environmental factors. Since companies cannot control these events, the key is to anticipate them, prepare contingency plans, and build resilience into business operations. Let's look into the various event identification techniques that are commonly used in the process of risk identification. These techniques help organizations systematically identify potential risks instead of depending only on guesswork. By applying these methods, companies can ensure that no major risk is overlooked, whether it comes from inside the business or from the outside environment. Here are some of the key techniques. 1. Brainstorming sessions. A group discussion where people freely share ideas about what risks might occur. 2. Event inventories and loss event data. Checking past problems or standard lists of risks to identify what could happen again. 3. Interviews and self-assessment. Asking managers and employees directly about the risks in their areas. 4. Facilitated workshops. Group discussions led by a facilitator to identify risks more systematically. 5. Isford Vivagaram. Reviewing strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to uncover risks. 6. Risk questionnaires and surveys. Collecting structured responses from employees about potential risks. 7. Scenario analysis. Thinking about what-if situations, like market crashes or supplier shutdowns. 8. Technology. Using tools such as software, analytics, or AI to detect and predict risks. In the following slide, we will look into each of these techniques in detail with simple explanations and examples. The first technique is brainstorming sessions. These are meetings where employees, managers, or staff members come together to openly discuss the risks they see in their areas of work. The main idea is to create a space where people can freely share their thoughts, experiences, and concerns without hesitation. During brainstorming, every idea is noted down, even if it looks small or less important, because sometimes even a small observation can reveal a big risk. The purpose is not only to identify risks, but also to suggest possible solutions. For example, people in operations may highlight risks related to machinery breakdowns, while the finance team may point out risks related to cash flow or fraud. By combining these perspectives, the company gets a wider view of potential risks. There are also tools and software that help make brainstorming more structured and effective, such as Sharp Decisions, Resolver Ballot, Option Finder, and Facilitate Pro. These tools allow participants to vote, rank, or organize ideas in a systematic way, making the process more efficient. In simple words, brainstorming sessions turn collective knowledge into a powerful tool for identifying risks early. The second technique is event inventories and loss event data. Event inventories are basically detailed lists of risks or events that are commonly faced by companies in a particular industry. For example, a bank's event inventory might include risks like loan defaults, cybersecurity attacks, or compliance violations. A manufacturing company's event inventory could include equipment failures, supply chain disruptions, or worker safety incidents. These inventories give managers and employees a ready-made checklist of possible risks to think about, instead of relying only on memory or experience. They act as a guide to make sure nothing important is missed during risk identification. Along with inventories, we also have loss event data. This refers to actual information collected about risks that have already occurred in the past. For instance, a financial services company might maintain a database of fraud cases, credit losses, or system failures. By studying such real incidents, companies can better understand how often these events happen, how much they cost, and how they can be prevented in the future. When used together, event inventories and loss event data provide a strong foundation for brainstorming sessions. Participants don't start from scratch. They already have a set of examples and real cases to consider. This makes risk identification more practical and grounded in reality. In simple words, this technique combines a library of possible risks with lessons learned from past incidents to ensure that risk identification is thorough and complete. The third technique is interviews and self-assessment. In this approach, each business unit or department looks at itself and evaluates the risks it faces. This is called a self-assessment. The idea is that the people who work inside a unit know their processes, challenges, and vulnerabilities better than anyone else. For example, the finance team might identify risks such as errors in reporting, late payments, or regulatory compliance issues. The IT department might highlight risks like data breaches, system downtime, or outdated software. After completing their self-assessment, each unit submits it to the Central Risk Management Coordinator or team. This way, the organization collects information directly from the source, ensuring no area is overlooked. Along with self-assessment, interviews are also a key part of this technique. The risk management team may sit down with managers, supervisors, or even frontline employees to ask questions about possible risks, past incidents, and areas of concern. These interviews encourage open communication and help uncover risks that may not be documented formally. For example, in a hospital setting, interviewing nurses and doctors may reveal risks related to patient safety or equipment shortages, risks that might not appear in formal reports. Similarly, in a retail chain, interviewing store managers could bring up issues like theft, customer complaints, or supply delays. In simple terms, interviews and self-assessments make risk identification personal and specific. They bring out insights directly from the people involved in day-to-day operations and combine them into a bigger picture for the organization. The fourth technique is facilitated workshops. In this approach, a skilled facilitator leads a structured discussion with a group of participants. The main purpose of these workshops is to identify events or risks that could affect the achievement of the organization's objectives. Unlike unstructured brainstorming, facilitated workshops are more organized and guided, making sure that the discussion stays focused and productive. For example, let's say a company is reviewing its external financial reporting process. A financial controller might organize a workshop with the accounting team. During the session, the facilitator would ask questions like, what could go wrong in preparing accurate reports? What kinds of delays or errors might occur? Are there any regulatory changes we should be worried about? Through this structured discussion, the team can identify risks such as data entry errors, late submissions, changes in tax laws, or problems with accounting software. Facilitated workshops also encourage collaboration across different levels of staff. A workshop might include senior management, middle managers, and operational staff, all sharing their unique perspectives. This creates a more complete picture of potential risks. For instance, in a manufacturing company, a facilitated workshop could bring together production managers, maintenance staff, and supply chain officers. Together, they might identify risks such as machine breakdowns, supply delays, or safety hazards. By discussing these risks in a group, the organization can also start prioritizing which risks are most critical. The strength of facilitated workshops is that they combine collective knowledge with a structured process, ensuring that important risks are identified and properly discussed. The fifth technique is SWOT analysis, which is a very popular tool used not only in risk identification, but also in overall strategy formulation. The word SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It provides a simple but powerful framework to analyze both internal and external factors that can affect the organization. Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors. These are aspects within the company's control, such as its culture, structure, financial resources, employee skills, or even the efficiency of its operations. For example, a strong brand name, customer loyalty, or ownership of unique technology would be considered strengths. On the other hand, high debt levels, a weak brand presence, or lack of sufficient capital would be weaknesses. Opportunities and threats are external factors, meaning they usually lie outside the control of management in the short run. For example, opportunities might include things like a country reducing tariffs, which could open new markets, or an increase in demand that allows the company to capture a bigger market share. On the other hand, threats might include rising costs of raw materials, increasing competition in the industry, or a shortage of skilled labor. By carrying out a SWOT analysis, management can clearly see where the company stands. It highlights what internal strengths the company can use to its advantage, what weaknesses it needs to address, what external opportunities it can pursue, and what external threats it needs to prepare for. In terms of risk identification, SWOT is very useful because it naturally points out areas where risks may emerge. For example, a weakness like high debt indicates financial risk. A threat like increasing competition highlights strategic and operational risks. Opportunities can also point to risks if the company is not prepared to take advantage of them, like missing out on a new market opening. So, SWOT analysis is not only about planning strategy, but also about making sure risks are properly identified and managed while pursuing opportunities. The sixth method for risk identification is through risk questionnaires and risk surveys. These tools are designed to systematically gather information from employees, managers, or other stakeholders about the risks that might affect the organization. A risk questionnaire is usually a structured document containing a series of predefined questions. These questions are related to both internal and external risks. For example, internally, the questionnaire may ask about risks related to customers, creditors or investors, suppliers, day-to-day operations, products, or even physical facilities. By answering these questions, management is forced to think carefully about where vulnerabilities might exist inside the company. A risk survey, on the other hand, is typically more open-ended. Instead of listing structured questions, participants may be asked broad questions like, "What do you see as the 5 most important risks that could prevent the company from achieving its strategic objectives?" This open style allows respondents to bring in unique perspectives that might not be captured by a structured questionnaire. Risk surveys and questionnaires are particularly effective because they collect insights directly from those who are closest to the business processes and the external environment. For example, frontline employees may identify operational risks, while senior management may highlight strategic or financial risks. The risks covered generally include both internal risks, such as customer issues, supplier problems, operational inefficiencies, product failures, or facility breakdowns, and external risks, such as political instability, social changes, environmental challenges, economic downturns, or rising competition. By consolidating responses from multiple people, risk questionnaires and surveys help the organization build a broad and realistic picture of where the threats lie. They also ensure that risks are not overlooked, since employees from different departments may identify very different concerns. In short, questionnaires provide a structured way to think through risks, while surveys provide a more flexible and open approach. Both methods together can be very effective in creating a comprehensive risk register. The seventh method of risk identification is scenario analysis. This technique is based on asking what-if questions. Managers and teams imagine different possible events or scenarios that could occur, and then analyze how each scenario would affect the business. The purpose of scenario analysis is to prepare the organization for unexpected events and to evaluate the potential consequences before they actually happen. By doing this, management can plan in advance and reduce the impact if the scenario becomes reality. For example, let's consider the scenario of an earthquake. If an earthquake occurs, the business might face several types of risks. Key employee risk. Important employees may be injured or unavailable, which could disrupt critical operations. Product damage. Finished goods or raw materials could be destroyed, leading to losses in sales or production delays. Market share loss. If the company cannot deliver products on time, competitors may take advantage and capture part of the market. Customer care issues. Customers may lose confidence in the company if service levels drop during the crisis. Worker compensation claims. Employees who are affected may require compensation or insurance payouts, which increases costs. Capital market risk. The company may be unable to trade or raise funds during the crisis, which puts further pressure on financial stability. These examples show how one single event, like an earthquake, can trigger multiple types of risks across different areas of the business. Scenario analysis is not limited to natural disasters. It can also include events like cyber attacks, economic recessions, strikes, sudden regulatory changes, or the loss of a major customer. By going through different what-if situations, management can identify vulnerabilities, evaluate the severity of each possible impact, and develop contingency plans to respond effectively. In short, scenario analysis is about preparing today for the possible problems of tomorrow so that the business can remain resilient even in the face of uncertainty. The eighth method of identifying risks is through the use of technology. In today's business environment, technology is not just a support tool, but also a critical enabler for risk identification and communication. It can be applied both internally, within the company, and externally in the outside environment. 1. Internal use of technology. Inside the organization, technology helps in sharing and communicating risk-related information quickly and effectively. For example, a company can use its intranet to circulate internal reports, policy changes, or updates on emerging risks. Employees across different departments can upload data, incident reports, or compliance issues into centralized systems. Risk management coordinators can track and monitor risk events in real time using internal software platforms. This kind of internal communication ensures that everyone in the organization stays informed and that risk data is not confined to just one department. Second, external use of technology. Externally, technology is equally powerful. Companies can use the internet and other digital tools to scan for risks that may affect their products, services, or overall reputation. For example, social media platforms can be monitored to detect negative customer feedback or complaints before they escalate into bigger problems. Online news and regulatory websites can alert management to new laws, political changes, or industry disruptions. Specialized risk scanning software can detect cyber threats, fraud attempts, or market changes that may impact the company's strategy. In short, external scanning helps the company stay aware of risks outside its direct control, such as political risks, environmental risks, social movements, or changes in consumer sentiment. Why this matters? In the digital age, risks can appear and spread very quickly. A single customer complaint on social media can go viral within hours and harm the company's reputation. Similarly, regulatory changes published online can immediately affect compliance requirements. By actively using technology, companies can identify risks early and respond faster. So, to summarize, technology is both a communication tool internally and a scanning tool externally. The use of intranet inside the company and internet outside the company ensures that risk information flows smoothly in all directions.
So today we covered the first risk management process, that is risk identification. In this session, we discussed the internal and external factors, and we also looked at the different event identification techniques. We will continue in the next episode with the second step of the risk management process. See you there!